I set the mug down hard enough to rattle the silverware. The chip along the rim caught the light, a small, sharp reminder that it wasn't the glassware everyone else was using. Before I could even pull my hand back, Alyssa slid into her seat and bumped the edge of the table with her hip. The coffee lurched forward and splashed across my lap, soaking through the fabric in a hot wave. "Oh, oops," she said, already reaching for a napkin she didn't offer. Damon laughed. A short, careless sound. "Honestly, I wish you'd just leave." The room went quiet for a beat. A fork clinked against a plate. Someone cleared their throat. I heard all of it, but none of it touched me as sharply as his words. I pressed my hand against the wet cloth, feeling the heat seep into my palm. My jaw tightened. I blinked once, twice, steadying my breath before it betrayed me. "I'm fine," I said, though no one had asked. I dabbed at the spill. Damon turned back to his friends. Alyssa brushed crumbs from her dress as if that small gesture erased what she'd done. I didn't bother looking at either of them. Instead, I slid my purse closer with my foot, checking the weight of the legal envelope inside. Just a small adjustment. Nothing to draw attention. Nothing to hint at what I carried. Someone poured more coffee. Someone asked for syrup. The brunch rolled on as if a mother hadn't just been dismissed from her son's table. I lifted the chipped mug again, out of habit, then set it down before it reached my lips. My hand was still shaking, almost imperceptibly enough that I curled it into my napkin until the tremor passed. I stood, smoothing the wet patch with my palm. "Bathroom," I murmured, though Damon barely glanced up. I walked slowly, forcing each step into calm, even as my fingers curled into a fist at my side. The hallway felt colder than the dining room. Quieter. I closed the bathroom door behind me and leaned against it for a moment, letting the hush settle around me. The fabric clung to my legs. My hand throbbed from the heat, but it wasn't the spill that stayed with me. It was the way he'd said it, like I was a burden he'd finally grown tired of dragging. I straightened, smoothed my blouse and prepared to go back out there, already sensing the next shift waiting in the house beyond the door. I opened the door and stopped short. The sewing desk was gone. The corner near the window where the light used to hit, just right in the morning, that space was empty. The stack of folded fabric I'd left on the chair was crammed into a cardboard box on the floor. My pin cushion was missing. The walls were bare. "Hey," Alyssa said, from the hallway holding a measuring tape. "We're thinking of turning this into an office. You've still got plenty of space in the garage, right?" I didn't answer. Damon came up behind her, looking anywhere but at me. "It's just temporary," he said. "You don't really use it anymore." I walked past them and out the back door. The dog followed me without a word. In the garage, the desk sat between the lawn tools and a crate of broken holiday lights. A thin layer of dust had already settled across the surface. I dropped to my knees beside it, ran my hand along the edge like it might still remember me. The third drawer stuck same as always. I pulled it harder and felt the familiar click. The key was still taped beneath the wooden divider, small, brass, ordinary. I slipped it into my pocket. It wasn't for the desk. I stood slowly brushing grit from my pants. My knees ached. My hands were cold. I stared at the desk for a long time before turning off the light and heading back inside. Damon was on the couch. Alyssa had her laptop open already, browsing chairs. I passed through the room and didn't stop. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with a notepad and 3 columns. What they took. What they owe. What they don't know. I didn't rush. I wrote slowly, each letter pressed hard enough to leave marks on the next page. In the morning, I'd walk the dog early. I'd visit a branch downtown. I already knew which one. I folded the list and tucked it into my wallet right beside the key. The light in the hallway was still on, but the house felt dark anyway. I reached for my jacket and checked the weather just cold enough to keep most people in. I stopped in the hallway when I heard my name. "She's basically our mortgage," Alyssa said, laughing. Her phone was on speaker. "Damon just needs to get her signature and we're set." Silence from the other end, then a voice, her sister. I think asking something I couldn't make out. Alyssa answered casual. "She won't even read it. She still trusts him." I stepped back, let the floor creak loud enough to announce me, then walked into the kitchen like I hadn't heard a thing. Alyssa jumped and ended the call without a word. The look on her face said it all, fear. Then the quick plastic smile. That afternoon, Damon came into my room holding a folder. "Hey, Mom," he said, too upbeat. "Just some minor paperwork for the refinance. Nothing big. Just need your signature here." He handed me a pen already uncapped. I took it, turned the barrel between my fingers, didn't click it, didn't speak. Just looked down at the form, then back at him. The numbers were small but wrong. The language was vague but familiar. I recognized the setup. It wasn't minor. It was an authorization. "I'll sleep on it," I said finally. He looked confused. "It's just a form, Mom." I smiled. All the more reason not to rush. He left the room without pushing further, but I felt his gaze stay behind. That night, I placed the folder on the counter beside the coffee pot, just outside the camera's view. I folded a napkin over it like it didn't matter, but I knew it did. I sat down with my planner and pulled the card from the back pocket. Elliot Marr. Trusts and Estates. I hadn't called him in years, not since Charles passed. But the number hadn't changed. I dialed. 1 ring, 2. A voice I still recognized picked up. "Elliot," I said quietly. "It's Marlene Kessler. I think it's time we spoke." He asked one question. "Do you have the documents?" I said yes. I always did. The next morning I slipped the folder into my bag. The coffee brewed. I fed the dog, let him outside, then locked the door behind me. I pulled the bathroom door shut and waited for the click. It didn't come. I tried again, closed it harder. Slower, pressed the handle. Nothing. Just that loose swing, like the frame didn't care if I wanted privacy or not. Quirk of the house, Damon said when I brought it up. You know how old places are. But it never happened when he used it. Or Alyssa. Only when I was inside. Twice that week she walked in without knocking. Once while I was brushing my teeth. Once while I was seated, mid-thought, mid-day, mid-dignity. Both times she smiled like I was in the wrong room. That evening, I stepped into the garage and pulled the door shut behind me. Turned the lock. No one followed. No one knocked. I stood in the dim light and didn't move. Just stood. Counted the seconds. Breathed through my nose. Let the silence press against my ribs until I remembered they still expanded. I picked up my phone. Walked back inside. Took a photo of the latch. Zoomed in. Captured the rust, the bend in the plate, the hairline crack in the wood. On my laptop, I created a new folder. I named it Decency. Dropped the image in. Then I closed the lid and made a reservation online for a storage unit on Burnside Avenue. Under name M. Everly. My maiden name. I didn't need much space. Just enough for what mattered. Enough for what they'd eventually try to claim wasn't mine. Charles's journals. Our wedding china. The original deed to this house. The next morning, I filled 2 boxes while Alyssa ran errands. Marked them fabric and holiday. She wouldn't look twice. I left the boxes by the door and let the dog out for his walk. When I returned, I placed the boxes in my trunk. Drove them to unit number 204 and stacked them in the corner. One shelf already waited an empty metal rack bolted to the wall, clean coal mine. I locked the door behind me and tested it twice. It clicked the first time. I walked into Elliot's office and shut the door behind me. No small talk. No coffee offered. He just pointed to the chair across from him and slid a folder across the desk. Your husband thought ahead, he said. Everything's still in your name. The house, the rentals. 418 in investments more if we factor current interest. I nodded, but said nothing. My hands stayed in my lap. Elliot tapped another page. And this clause here. Charles added it himself 2 years before he passed. Anyone who tries to coerce or manipulate you financially forfeits all future claims. He paused. Let that sink in. I reached for the pen. My hand shook once, just once, but I pressed the side of my palm to the wood edge of the table. Breathed in through my nose, out, then signed. Name steady, signature sharp. That's it, Elliot said, watching me. You want me to notify them? No, I said. Not yet. I asked for 2 certified copies. One for my records. One for insurance. Back home, I took the yellow folder from my bag, slipped 1 copy in, sealed it tight. That one went to the safe deposit box tomorrow. The second I wrapped it in plastic. Walked to the kitchen, moved the frozen peas and dog food tray aside, and slid it flat beneath the ice pack. Closed the freezer door with a quiet click. Not dramatic, not revenge, just planning, just proof. The dog blinked at me from his bed near the table. I gave him a scratch behind the ear and picked up the leash. We headed out before the sun dropped behind the trees. I walked slower than usual, not because I was tired. I wasn't. I walked to feel the weight of each step, to remember what it felt like to move toward something, not away. The street was quiet, the air sharp. My coat zipped high. My hand held the leash steady now. At the corner, I turned right. There were still boxes to pack, still more to move. I made a list in my head, not because I might forget, but because lists helped me feel clean. Straight, clear. I opened the drawer and took the watch. Charles never let it sit idle. He'd wind it every Saturday, even after retirement. I wrapped it in a dish towel and placed it into the small box, already half filled with papers. Photo sleeves, a few letters. Then I moved to the kitchen. The good cookware, copper-bottomed heavy, was buried behind dull pans they always used. I packed them one by one, wrapped each lid in newspaper, taped the box shut. Decluttering, I said, when Alyssa raised an eyebrow, trying to clear my head a little. She nodded without asking, too busy scrolling on her phone to notice what mattered. The photo albums went next. Then my old tax returns, my marriage license, a stack of birthday cards I'd saved from Damon over the years, the handwriting shrinking as he aged. The dog watched from the corner of the room. I gave him a biscuit, scratched his chin. I used thick black marker on every box, pressed hard, papers, cookware, watches, old photos. One box smaller than the rest I labeled last. I wrote slower. Let the ink soak in. Only open if you forgot who I am. I carried the boxes out 2 at a time, loaded them into the trunk, drove to Unit Number 204 and stacked them carefully, everything placed with care, just like I used to fold Damon's shirts when he was little. That evening, while I wiped down the counter, Damon leaned against the fridge. Hey, might have a realtor swing by next week, he said casually. No pressure. Just to see what the market's like. I dried my hands, nodded once. Sure, whatever you need. He smiled. Probably thought I was finally loosening up. Letting go. I returned to my room and marked another line off the list. Tomorrow, the lockbox. Then the gold earrings I hadn't worn in years. I opened the closet, pulled out the old suitcase, and set it by the door. The zipper stuck halfway, but I didn't force it. Just left it there open. Waiting. I clicked the folder on the desktop. Opened the document. Froze. There it was. My initials scribbled near the bottom corner of a contractor invoice I'd never seen. I zoomed in. It wasn't even a close match. Sloppy. Rushed. But enough to pass if no one looked too hard. I checked the upload time. 2 days ago, I scrolled to the file name. Final Phase 3.pdf. So this wasn't the first, just the last. I downloaded it, renamed it Forgery 1, attached it to an email. No message, just the subject line. Need this logged. Quietly. MK sent to Elliot's private address. No hesitation. Then I shut the laptop. I didn't move for a long time. Didn't cry. Didn't get angry. Just sat there with the quiet. With the facts. They thought they'd wear me down by noise. Turns out silence weighs more. When I finally stood, I pulled out my planner and turned to the tab marked Transfers. I made 2 phone calls. First, the gas company closed the account. Then the water. Last, the electric bill. I'd been paying it since Charles passed. I gave them the date to shut it off. Any reason for closing? The woman asked. Change in ownership, I said. Won't be needing the light anymore. Before dinner, I drove to the bank and asked for a cashier's check. Full balance. The teller blinked when she saw the amount but didn't say a word. I folded the slip and slid it into the same envelope as the house deed. At home, Alyssa was plating dinner. Where were you? She asked. Errands, I said, taking off my coat. Damon looked up from his phone. I've got a couple more things for you to sign this week, just heads up. I nodded. Of course. I sat at the table, folded my napkin across my lap, and waited as she passed me a plate. Chicken. Overcooked, but I chewed, swallowed, and thanked her like always. That night, I tucked the envelope beside my suitcase. Everything in one place. Easy to reach, easy to carry. I set the table. One last time. Plates down. Forks straight. Glasses full. The kind of care no one notices until it's gone. Alyssa hovered, animated. The realtor stood beside her, smiling politely, while Alyssa pointed to the walls, the ceiling, the corners of a home she didn't own. I was thinking a soft arch here. And maybe a new layout for the kitchen open concept, of course. Damon laughed from the head of the table. Mom's finally ready to hand over the house. About time, right? I took one breath. Then stood. Slow clear. No rush. I walked to the kitchen counter, picked up the yellow folder, and placed it in the center of the table. Quietly. Flat. That's interesting, I said, looking at neither of them. Because this says I'm removing you both from the property title and filing for misuse of power and attempted fraud. The room snapped to stillness. Even the dog stopped breathing. Alyssa blinked. Damon's mouth opened, then closed. The realtor cleared her throat. I'm going to excuse myself. No one stopped her. I pulled out my chair and sat. My hands stayed on the table. Still, steady. Everything's in the file. Certified copies. Video evidence. Signatures. Dates. The forged document you uploaded already submitted. Indexed. Labeled. I assume you understand what this means. No answer. I reached for my coffee. Sipped once. Warm. Strong. Not a drop spilled. Beside the mug, I laid down a second bundle their unpaid bills. The ones I'd been covering, mortgage, utilities, car note. I suggest you find an attorney before Monday. I'll be filing first thing. Damon tried to speak. Alyssa reached for the papers. I tapped the folder once. No need. You'll receive your own copies soon. I stood again. Pushed the chair in. Walked past the dishes, past the disbelief. No apology. No goodbye. Outside, I opened the car door. The dog jumped in without a command. The trunk was already packed. Suitcase. Folder. Everything that mattered. I closed the door gently, turned the key, didn't look back. The phone buzzed again. I let it ring. 10 minutes later, another email. Subject urgent. Please respond. From Alyssa's name, but I knew it was Damon typing. The words tried too hard. I stared at the screen, then powered it off. The accounts were frozen. Elliot confirmed the title had transferred cleanly. Legal notification had been sent. The realtor had backed off. I could almost hear the echo in their kitchen. I opened my contacts, scrolled down. My son. I tapped it, edited the name, Matthew, then saved. My son was still mine, but not like that. Not today. A text came through from an unknown number I didn't know. Please call. I held the phone for a full minute. The dog laid his head on my foot. The heater clicked on. Somewhere down the hall, a neighbor turned on a radio. I deleted the message. No reply. No explanation. In the small kitchen, I stirred cream into my coffee. 3 turns. Just like always. The folder marked Family Shared was still on my cloud drive. I opened it. Dozens of photos. Old spreadsheets. A copy of a Christmas card Alyssa had designed 5 years ago that never made it to print. I selected all. Hit delete. Confirmed. The folder vanished. I sat at the small table in the rental unit I'd paid off a decade ago. The one Charles and I had once thought we'd turn into a guest house. I hadn't told them I still had the deed. Never even showed them the keys. The windows rattled lightly in the afternoon wind. The dog shifted in his sleep. The coffee was still warm. I reached for the second cup, one I'd poured just in case someone visited. It stayed full, untouched. I lifted it anyway, carried it to the sink, emptied it slow. Then I rinsed it out and placed it upside down to dry. I rose before the sun. No alarms, no voices, just the quiet knock of wind against the window and the dog's soft sigh at the foot of the bed. I stood, pulled on my sweater, padded to the kitchen. The coffee had already started set it the night before. Simple things. Still mine. I fed the dog, scratched behind his ears, then pulled one mug from the shelf. Just one. That's all I needed. The cabin faced a lake. Still water, no boats, no footprints. Just mist curling over the surface like it didn't want to leave. I poured the coffee slow. Not one drop spilled. The mug felt warm in my hand. Familiar. Solid. I sat at the table and didn't rush the first sip. I let the warmth fill my chest before I swallowed. My hand didn't tremble. For once it didn't have to. No one barged in. No one reminded me what I owed. No signatures. No stares. Just me, a dog, and a morning with no weight pressing it down. The envelope on the counter stayed where I left it. Only if they knock. Simple. Sealed. Waiting. I didn't check it again. The sun broke through the trees. Light spilled across the floor in long, quiet lines. I didn't need more. Didn't need proof. Didn't need noise. I had peace. And coffee. I lifted the mug to my lips. The first drop didn't spill.